Thanks for staying up later. I'm Bob Costas. Many of you know Debbie Allen from her role on Fame, from her role as Howard Rollins' love interest in Ragtime, and if you saw her on Broadway in Sweet Charity, you had to be impressed, and we'll talk about all those things as the half hour rolls along. But let's begin with A Different World, because you kind of have the job, I think it's fair to say, to draw a parallel to sports. You're the coach who comes in to a talented team, but they've had a bad record last year and things weren't working exactly right, and you got to pull it together and make it all coalesce.
That's right. Well, I think the first thing I had to deal with was a morale problem, and that's why that calling me a coach certainly fits the bill. I had a wonderful cast of actors who were pretty unhappy and not really feeling that they were collaborating and doing stories that they felt were topical enough or whatever. And then I had a bullpen of these very talented writers, and there seemed to be a separation going on between the producers and the writers and the cast, and they needed to somehow come together. So that was my biggest job, was to go in there and make it all come together, and that I think I certainly have accomplished.
So you directed all the episodes last season, right?
All the episodes.
And what's the role for you coming up this year? Same, or expand to producing? Or?
Well, I produced and directed every episode. I was the producer and the director. There were other producers as well. Well, you're in television, you know, honey. We all have to have that title, darling, to have that little title. Doesn't matter about the money. Just get that title. This season coming up is, we're talking about it now. I only signed to do 1 year of A Different World because I have such an interesting life, Bob, and a big career, and I'm moving in so many directions. I have a big record album coming out in May. I'm doing a movie of the week right now for Disney. I have a full life at home. So when I came into A Different World, I thought this was a wonderful challenge for me to do, to come in and make this show come together. At that time, I thought I was going to have Lisa Bonet, certainly, to put her back into the show. And I did what I was supposed to do in my year's time. So now we're into major talks about, Debbie, would you like to stay, or maybe do another show with us, or right now we're in major conversations about it.
Will you have Lisa Bonet in the future, or
I would love to have Lisa Bonet. You know, I think America and most people have such a misconception about that child. She really took the rap, in my opinion, on that first year in a way that was really unfair. I mean, a lot of the bad press that she got, maybe she has an exotic personality, but certainly it sold a lot of papers, so we can't get mad at her about that. But in terms of her temperament and what she was looking for, when I sat down and talked to her when I first came on board, we had some really heart-to-heart conversations, and some of the people that had been there the year before me never even bothered to ask her, is there a story you would like to do on the show? She was just so excited and thrilled that somebody was really communicating with her. So I felt that there was a big communication problem, and she certainly was the scapegoat for a lot of that drama.
You're a graduate of Howard University, and I'm just guessing, just from the superficial evidence, I might be wrong, but that Bill Cosby and some of the people who have an interest in A Different World probably saw that, in addition to your other talents, as a plus, because here's a program set in a predominantly black university, and you're trying to capture that realistically.
Yeah, I think that really made me the right candidate. My experience on Fame dealing with young people, my own energy, my ability and development as a director, and certainly being a black woman and being a product of a black university, Howard University, made me the prime candidate. And I think Bill said, go get her. And they did.
It seems to me that while certain projects need to be made that deal specifically with the black experience, it'll also represent a step forward when we see films and TV shows where whites are the principal characters, but the next-door neighbor just happens to be black, and the fact that they're black doesn't have anything to do with it. They're not black for the purpose of having a black person to make a sociological statement. Lady goes to the doctor happens to be black.
Well, I've been saying this for years. I mean, this is I think I would probably be very frustrated as an actress if I had not taken the time and had the ability to develop myself in all these other ways. Because, I mean, Glenn Close and Meryl Streep, these are my contemporaries, and they get to do all these accents and practice and do all these wonderful parts. And I've always said, you know, why couldn't I be the neighbor in Kramer versus Kramer? Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Why not? And it's just a matter of a way of thinking and just people waking up and living. I mean, black people exist. I mean, when you look back at those early movies, honey, in the 50s, those early, you know, Annette Funicello movies, there weren't any black people on the beach, honey. They weren't even selling sunglasses.
And yet Chubby Checker might show up and entertain them.
Or
which
James
was
Brown.
The weirdest thing. Black entertainers performing for an entirely white audience.
But, you know, we exist now. We are on the Supreme Court. We died in the space shuttle. We run for president. We run television networks. We are the #1 show on TV. We are here, so I think it's time.
How much direct racial prejudice did you experience growing up in Texas?
Very direct. When I grew up in Texas in the late 50s and the early 60s, I was not allowed to go to the amusement park but once a year on Juneteenth, which was Emancipation Day for black people.
What a bitter irony that is. That's not almost perverse, that is perverse. They'll celebrate the fact that Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation and tell all you black folks, see how far you've come? One day a year, we'll let you in here.
Well, that was one, and the theaters were all segregated. So we all went to the Dowling Theater. I was not allowed to study dancing because I was black. I was not allowed in the only professional school there, the Houston Ballet. I mean, it goes on, you know, black water fountains, white water fountains. But somewhere...
What do you think it is? Maybe you were about to say this yourself before I interject the question. What do you think it is in some people's character, yours, other members of your family, that allows them to surmount that and take whatever anger they have and turn it in a productive fashion while others succumb to bitterness?
Well, see, for me, it was never a matter of anger. That's what I was about to say, because somewhere through all of that, I didn't grow up bitter or angry. I grew up with a superior understanding that I was dealing with a limited group of people in a limited space and time. My mother is a woman far and beyond her time. Vivian Ayers is her name. She's director of a museum in Mount Vernon. And in the 50s, with these 3 siblings, she was always striving for something more. And she raised us, specifically her. My father was supportive, but it was her doing. She raised us to be boundless. So we didn't think of ourselves as being in a community called Houston, 3rd Ward. We thought of ourselves as beings in the universe. So we had a really broad space out there that we could reach out to and place to go. So we didn't grow up with a limited vision, even though things were limited and limiting. We knew that somehow we would find a way if this is what we wanted to do. I wanted to dance. Alicia wanted to act, sing. My brother wanted to be a musician. My baby brother, Huey, well, he was a little toddler. So...
What are the brothers doing now? One brother or 2 brothers?
2. My oldest brother, Tex, is a fierce jazz musician in New York and a composer. And my sister, Felicia, we know what she's doing. My baby brother, Hugh, is graduating from Duke University in Masters in Business, and he's brilliant. And I've taken many of his tips about investments, and they've all turned out right. So I think the difference is your community of immediate family and your understanding, and it has to do with education. It has a lot to do with education as to whether you turn out bitter or you turn out sweet, meaning you go on, you rise above it, you go on, you go.
Later in L.A., we'll be right back.
Master locks are tough under fire.
This is where we started. A clean sheet of paper. No boundaries. No rules. No preconceived ideas. Just a desire to build the best sports car in the world. A car for one driver in 1,000. A car destined to leave its mark. The new Z from Nissan.
The past. We carry it with us in worn leather bags we call memory. Not her. Her future was on the horizon, and she was watching for it. Watching, with eyes big and brown. No, I don't think so. Big and blue as the twilight with all of its secrets.
Durasoft Colors contact lenses get your eyes a second look.
The American Express gift check lets anyone you want buy anything they want. It has its own card, it comes gift wrapped, and if it's lost or stolen, it's even refundable. The American Express gift check. Ask for it where you bank.
Somewhere in all these dusty law books, a great idea got lost. The idea that law's for people, and people should be able to afford it. At Hyatt Legal Services, we took the fear out of legal fees. You can consult with one of our lawyers for just $20. And for cases like divorce, wills, accidents, and bankruptcy, we tell you our fee up front. I'm Joel Hyatt, and you have my word on it. We took the fear out of legal fees across the country and in your neighborhood.
But you're not sure if you want to perform?
There was a time when I was sure that was all I wanted. Then there was a time when I was sure all I wanted to do was teach. And now...
What?
Now I'm not sure about anything. Oh, Elizabeth, I want to dance. I want to dance. I better get back to work before I cool off.
A look back at Fame. Weird history for that show. Critically acclaimed, Emmy nominations up one side of the wall and down the other. Doesn't make it on network television. And then has like a 6 or 7 year life in syndication.
I know. It's wonderful. It gives a new hope to television series that don't quite make it. I mean, we were on NBC on Thursday nights. Same time Felicia's on right now, 8 o'clock. And at that time, NBC was not #1. And we were struggling against Tom Selleck and that bikini bathing suit he was wearing. And after 2 seasons, we got canceled. Our hearts were broken. And then syndication picked up that ball and ran with it. And now...
When we say syndication, not syndication of repeats. New shows, new production for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, new shows, all new series, all new episodes. And it's another life, I mean, because it's really tough in this game. Goodness, you know, when you do a television show and you get a rating of a 14 or 15 share, I mean, that means maybe 15 million people saw you, and that wasn't a hit. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know how many movies don't get that kind of an audience.
How many times would you have to do Sweet Charity and fill that theater?
Darling, that leg would be, they'd have to put it on a string, honey, and do it like that. So, I don't know, it's very competitive, but I was thrilled that Fame had another life, and we deserved it. And bravo.
Gwen Verdon had created the role of Sweet Charity, and then Shirley MacLaine, another heavyweight, comes along. Did you study what they had done, ask people about their approach when you played the role, or did you just walk in and say...
I just walked in and did my thing with Bob Fosse. He liked my quality. He would never try to make me like them. I mean, I couldn't be like them. No one can be like anyone else. You can't be Gwen Verdon. She's one of a kind, as is Shirley. And I hope so am I. But he liked my Charity because he thought I was feisty, a little younger, more of a street fighter. And I had a ball playing that role, and it was wonderful. It came at a great time for me because on Fame, I'll never forget, you know, every year, even after I got in syndication, I'd sit up there humming at those Emmy Awards, nominated for Best Actress. And I knew I was never going to win because, you know, Cagney and Lacey were dying of cancer, honey, getting raped. And there I was talking about who's going to dance the lead. Well, it always was Jean Anthony Ray, you know, so my part just never was fully developed. And I never complained because I was developing as a writer, as a producer, as a composer, everything.
I saw you in Sweet Charity 3 times.
3 times?
Yep, 3 times. First time I saw it for myself, and the next 2 times were people come in from out of town and you want to take them to a show that's going to make them smile and have them leave happy, and there's a handful of shows that always fit that description. So I took others to see you a second and third time. And the audiences were predominantly white, as Broadway audiences are, and they delighted in your performance. But what I'm getting to is, I wonder if when you started, people said, this is a white role. What are you doing here?
Well, I don't know. You know, actually, I never suffered with that. I mean, the only thing I would hear occasionally was that Debbie Allen is great in this part, but somehow I feel the ghost of Gwen Verdon. And I'm like going, honey, she's not dead yet. What are you talking about, the ghost of Gwen Verdon? She's alive and kicking. What are we talking about? I think it's a classic part. And in theater, you have to allow that to happen. Be you white, black, Asian, whatever you are. If you can play the part, I think you should play the part. When they offered me the part, I don't think they had anybody else that was a triple threat singing and dancing and acting star that could not only play this part but bring in an audience. And all of that together, I think, made me the right combination. But as far as it being a white role, and in fact, when they cast Michael Rupert opposite me as Oscar, and he was white and I was black, and Bob and I had sat down together in my hotel room. We were chit-chatting about how we were going to cast the parts, and he asked me about it. And I said, hey, Bob, I mean, I think whoever's the best actor. He said, that's what I think, too. Whoever is the best actor should get that part. And this was progressive thinking. This is the thinking that I am, this is my kind of thinking, my generation. This is how I think, progressively that way.
Once you hear it, you gotta get near it. There's a whole lot of nothing going on. You want a snack? You gotta get that pack. There's a whole lot of nothing going on.
Incredibly delicious and so full of energy, Planters nuts are one irresistible snack.
Once you hear it, you gotta get near it. There's a whole lot of nothing going on.
Save big, big bucks!
It's Cashback City!
Amazing deals!
You've heard all the cashback deals, but the best deal is getting cash back on something worth driving. The 16-valve Suzuki Swift GT Automatic. It's fast, it's nimble, it's exhilarating to drive. And now, you can get $1,000 cash back from Suzuki. The 16-valve Swift Automatic. It's worth saving money on, because it's worth driving. See your Suzuki Swift dealer today.
Feel the magic as you drive in a car that makes you know you're alive. Feel the magic, Chrysler Plymouth. Feel the power, the control. Chrysler Plymouth magic's good for the soul. Feel the magic, Chrysler Plymouth. Roads are winding, skies are blue. Get a little magic going for you.
Feel the magic at your Chrysler Plymouth dealer.
If you're talking about it,
It was fascinating, really.
it's on. Donahue.
Sammy Davis Jr., he is without question one of the most complete entertainers in the history of show business. His talent has touched virtually every facet of the entertainment spectrum. He joins us to talk about the ups and the downs of his remarkable career. Meet the Candyman himself, Sammy Davis Jr., next Donahue.
Donahue, weekdays at 5 on Channel 3.
It's quite a coincidence that you're married to Norm Nixon, the former Laker and Clipper, and your sister, Felicia Rashad, is married to Ahmad Rashad. Is it just coincidence, or do you think there's something about your respective personalities that would have made athletes particularly attractive to the two of you?
Well, I think we both have good taste, let's say that, number one. And I think number two, growing up in Texas, in Houston, Texas, where sports was the center of our lives. I mean, the Oilers, the Dallas Cowboys, I mean, your whole life was around football. And in high school, everything we did had to do with the game. Were you a majorette? Were you a cheerleader? Were you in the band? It had to do with sports. So we've always had that kind of respect and adoration. But I think more than that, we just coincidentally found two men who were manly and strong enough to carry that ball with us and take us across that goal line, you know.
It seems to me, just taking a guess, and I haven't talked to either Norm or Ahmad about it, but you married them not when they were 21, 22 years old, so it wasn't a case of cheerleader going after big man on campus, or what you often see in baseball where the prettiest girl in a minor league city winds up marrying a guy on his way to the big leagues. These were more mature men who either were near or at the conclusion of their playing careers and had moved on to other things, and they're obviously multifaceted guys and not just ball players.
Well, that's maybe true of Felicia, not for me. I saw Norman Nixon win a world championship with the Lakers. I didn't meet him. I met him when he was a rookie. We were in a terrible movie together called The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. It starred Julius Erving, honey. That was the end of his acting career.
Yeah.
I love you, Julius, honey. Don't get mad. We all go through
Marv Albert was in that movie, too.
Was he?
Yep. You were in it? You don't remember?
Honey, I don't know. I watched it once. But no, Norman, actually, when I first met him, I was like, honey, who's this little whippersnapper over here? Does he have a green card? What is he? Who is he? And I loved watching him play. I met Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all of these guys in the same stroke, Julius Erving, and I was like amazed, you know, this power. And Norman and I became friends, and I was friends with him for a few years before we became romantically involved. And I watched him play, and I was amazed at his ability. And when I became involved with him, I really felt, because Norman, I'm sure, as Ahmad, had his pick of women. They were running after him, honey. They're still running, but don't try it, darling, because I'll have that knife out. But Norman, I think, was very attracted to me because I was about something also. I had a career, and I had a life that was equally important to me as was his career, was to him. Mm-hmm. And that made us very compatible. Because it's really tough with these guys, whether they're in sports or whatever, when you have a great deal of visibility, if you have a spouse who's just there for you and has nothing else to do, it's kind of tough because you're dealing with all that adulation. If somebody's just in the background all the time, sometimes it creates a lot of problems. And it was wonderful because he would go with me to the Emmy Awards, and I'd be the focus, and then I'd go with him, watch him play, and nobody cared about my autograph. They were just mobbing him. And so Felicia and I have had conversations about that, because I said to her, I said, you know, the difference, there's a difference here because you never saw Ahmad. You were not with him when he was carrying that ball across that line. I mean, he had some amazing games. I remember his games. I mean...
You are much more the sports fan than she is.
Maybe
She may have become a sports fan since, but it struck me, having met Felicia around the time that she was being courted by Ahmad, wonderful woman, obviously, not really a terribly knowledgeable sports fan.
Well, she knows about it now.
Sure she does.
But I said, you know, you've got to get out those tapes, girl, because I know. I mean, because Norman, we were talking about, you know, how great Ahmad is, what a great athlete he is, and what he was. And he didn't have to retire when he retired either.
It sort of ties in with the old famous quote, DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe. And they began courting after DiMaggio's career was over. Mm-hmm. And she went and entertained the troops in Korea. Came back, got off the plane. He asked her how the trip was. She said, Joe, you've never heard such cheering. Oh. He looked at her and he said, oh, yes, I have.
All right. Well, darling, I'm on my way to Italy. Maybe I'll entertain somebody over there. That's where Norman is playing right now.